Okay. We are about 3 after the hour now, so I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I just want to say a great big welcome back to all of our members. Many of you have been joining us twice a month for our Wednesday educational series, and we thank you so much for your constant participation. I also want to say a big welcome to those of you who are joining us for the first time. Those of you who are not yet members, please stay in touch with your local chapter for future opportunities and also for information on becoming a member. We look forward to seeing you again in the future. My name is Donna Wing, and I am a member of the ILEA Professional Development Committee. I hope everybody had a wonderful holiday and was able to spend some time with family members and or just get some stress-free relaxation. I have a couple of housekeeping notes before we get started. Please share your experience today on social media using the hashtags ILEA Webinar Wednesday and ILEA Welcomes All. Today's session is being recorded and will be available for your viewing on ILEA Hub. If you have any questions during the presentation for our speaker, please type these in the Q&A box, not the chat box. We will try to get to as many of these questions as possible, time permitting. Please feel free to share your thoughts and comments also in the chat box and let us know where you're watching from. We love to see the reach of the presentation. Today's keynote presentation, The New Power of Hybrid Events, is powered by Giants Enterprises. Hybrid events are not a short-lived trend, but a long-term development that will transform the way we plan, design, and experience events in the future, and will significantly emphasize the power of live experience. There is no question that the current pandemic has fundamentally changed live communication. More than that, it's acted as a catalyst and accelerator for developments that began well in advance. Against the background of digitalization, virtual elements have long been a part of live events, mostly, however, as separate, self-contained units. In the future, there'll be a great need for hybrid events to blend live with digital and virtual with in-person. The opportunity, completely new, innovative, and extremely effective communication possibilities. The challenge, in order for hybrid events to unfold their full power, events must be rethought and newly planned. In the future, we'll need a completely new approach to events. We're very excited to bring you today's presentation, The Power of Hybrid Events, and hope you come away with some new ideas, perspectives, and strategy to apply to your business and or career. Today's keynote speaker is Richard Stewart. Richard is the CEO North America for VOK DAMS, an agency for events and live marketing. He leads teams in Philadelphia and New York that produce world-class hybrid events and brand experiences for leading corporate brands. Prior to his current position, Richard was the agency's business director, Greater China, an expert in agile event management and business innovation in the US, Europe, the Asia Pacific, and China. Richard is actively engaged in the industry-wide effort to build a blueprint for the agency of the 2020s. Intelligent, diverse, resilient, and virtual first. Richard holds an MBA from Temple's University Fox School of Business and is fluent in Mandarin Chinese. VOK DAMS is a brand experience agency. Its worldwide headquarters are based in Wuppertal, Germany. The firm produced events in 88 countries around the world and is a global leader in hybrid event spaces. Please welcome Richard Stewart.
Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, so we are talking about hybrid events today, but really what I'm going to do is take you through a journey, the journey of our agency from really this time last year up until today. I've got my presentation behind me. Hopefully we've got it all lined up here, so we'll just jump into it. I'm Richard Stewart. I'm the CEO of our office in North America, based in Philadelphia. VOK DAMS is a global agency for events and live marketing. We've got offices in 19 cities around the world, including New York and Philly here in the US. We've been doing this for over 45 years with a 300-person team worldwide, most of whom we've been able to keep intact through this disruption. And today we'll be talking a little bit of how we went about that. We're heavy into quality certifications, having to match the GDPR standards in Europe. We're considered a leading agency worldwide, but really we're extremely strong in Germany, as you can imagine, where our home office is. In terms of our accomplishments, we have won about 160 awards worldwide at this point, including many of the major awards in the US, the Galaxy Awards, Brand X, Stevie's. We've been around the block a bit, and we've done quite a number of large live events. So when we're looking at all the way through last year, what we're mainly known for is things like a city takeover in the city of Miami for Lamborghini, the 150th anniversary of Bayer, and in this case, taking over a stadium, and doing things like kind of technological marvels for corporate clients such as BMW. So we're known as a large corporate event, live event producer, and we do it, as I mentioned, really around the world. Of course, COVID-19 put a mask on our ambitions. And just in terms of what our point of view is of this market disruption, we see it as a permanent structural change to the industry, almost like a continental shift. So as we hit 2020, things are moving, but we feel like the ground is still moving beneath us, and it will be through 2021 all the way out to 2020X. And when we get there, what we will find is that there's a new segmentation of our markets. Some segments will expand and some will shrink. And if you're on the landmass that is to become the Antarctica of the event industry, you better move. It's going to take a lot of retooling for agencies and retraining for us to really put ourselves in position going forward. This is kind of a call to action to you guys because it is a challenge, of course, and many of us are hurting in these times, but keep the future in mind and see that there's opportunities out there as well. For us, we feel like we're one of the agencies uniquely positioned for this time. In fact, our first hybrid event was in 2009 when we really began to roll out digital, 1999. So we've been doing it for a while. We've been integrating digital into our events. Of course, this has transitioned over time, but like many event agencies and like many individuals in the industry, we are also uniquely positioned to handle disruption. We went from the 1970s with a slide projector into AV and video, from AV and video into digitalization, wrapping in sustainability and live campaigns, moving to a more agile kind of agency setup to match our clients' needs. So we've been doing this for years, decades, and I'm sure that in this case, we're going to attack our new challenges in the same successful way. The event market in 2020, of course, was a strange one. This is our own kind of personal story around what was going on globally. In January and February, there was no effect. We began, except for in China. We began then in March and April to see postponements and cancellations of events. In our case, it was 100% live events not happening. 86% of them were classified as postponed, 14% canceled. At that time, we already began positioning ourselves in the digital realm. And as the year went on, we got a little more, we got a little more used to the digital space, and we went into this kind of waiting phase where there's still high risk areas around the world, lots of things fluctuating, but we had our feet pretty much on the ground in digital by that time, to the point where in the fourth quarter of 2020, and really up until today, we're now in a strategic phase where we're focusing on customer experience, data strategy, organizational structure, and culture for clients' brand experiences, many times with contracts running over a period of years. So we're into a lot more programmatic stuff at this time which helps us build going forward. When we're breaking down live, virtual, and hybrid events, of course, in 2020, we have pretty much produced all virtual events. What we see in the future, and you'll notice from a lot of market research that's coming out in this month, hybrid is the way forward. We're seeing it with our clients already. We believe it will build into a sustainable and long-term business model in the future as well. There's several ways to look at this, of course. One is that hybrid is the convergence of virtual and live. What we think also, though, is it's important to think about it as if it's on a continuum. So depending on the client, depending on the event itself, the particular project that you're talking about is going to fall somewhere on this continuum. There may not be many cases where there's 100% live events anymore. That's okay. It will fall sort of in that area. May not be 100% virtual, but we have to marry these two together in the same experience. That's one of the main challenges we'll have moving forward. The other is, and this really comes from things that have been happening in our marketplace for almost a decade, where many of the other channels will be integrated into what we do. So there will be a need to keep pushing the envelope, keep broadening our skill sets, and to provide a hybrid event experience that is really a platform type of experience. Our journey as we hit March was very much about virtual events, and into it we did go. We made a very early, very strong decision to go directly to virtual. I think that helped us a lot. We kind of shaped our agency, made it very lean for the year last year. Really, it's about survival at that point. But out of that came a real strong sense of what our core competencies are, what our core clients, who our core clients are, and really in the end ended up with some very healthy relationships with some great work. That work can be thought of as being in three different levels of immersion for virtual events. When we were in the March and April time period, we were really talking about streaming things that were live moments into the digital world. So taking, in the case of our client PwC, a digital event format that had a lot of live events in it and pushing our virtual out to make actually 6 times or 7 times more events than we did the year before in a virtual setting. Or we had a 1,000 plus live event scheduled for L'Oreal, 2 days before the event. This was mid-March. They came to us and said, we're not going to do it live. We need to go virtual. So out of the live venue, we went and into their office with a quick setup for a virtual event, streaming out to their 1,100 employees in the lobby of their building, and of course, also to personal devices of their employees. And finally, the Geneva Auto Show, which is something we're involved in each year with Volkswagen. We turned their media press conference into an all virtual affair. Timed and run in 2 15-minute segments. So here we're already starting to learn, turning a one hour, a half-hour media press conference into 2 smaller segments for the international press. We're learning kind of how virtual differs from live at this point. These are all things that pretty much we had to do right away, and we did that. Next, as we moved kind of into the summer months, we were more about translating live moments into the digital world. And you'll see the little differences here, like back to us, an internal event, a sales kickoff meeting we did for Vodafone. We're now able to kind of craft the experience, make the look and feel more of a digital first format, create a comfortable setting where people still have the idea of the live event, but also really upping our game on the digital side. Or in some other cases, we wanted to blow people away. So we take a studio and create an immersive live experience, in this case, a virtual roundtable for the European Union, where we create this great kind of scene for them, but it's an all virtual event where they're facing each other. This got a lot of compliments just based on the design of the event, the spirit behind it. It gives the client more value after the event than a normal maybe webinar that they would do. and then getting creative, on how we're putting people in a space. This was for an annual general meeting that we did, award ceremonies, taking these live moments and making them into very impactful digital scenes. The final way that, as we got further on into the year, we started moving more towards digital first event experiences. So this is pushing now into completely more the digital realm, where we're using a lot of the experiential stuff. VR and AR created a virtual showroom for Porsche, but also going more really into kind of pure virtual experiences that are not that um, technically difficult. Although this green screen we did have a 3D kind of all-encompassing virtual uh, environment, but making it about the spirit. When we got this client in here, the event looked great to those who were watching a stream online, but it was also incredible fun for the client themselves. And when you create the backstage stuff that we do, the kind of off-camera video moments, they create a video out of that was really well received, and you can sense the spirit of the company through that way. And then going even one step further, creating virtual worlds and events. A lot of people are talking about these days. We have an example here where you're actually able to build a kind of conceptual world where if you're on the bottom level on the ground, you're in a presentation area, plenary presentation, you're getting information. If you're in the clouds, you click into the clouds and you're suddenly into a breakout meeting where you're brainstorming ideas. If you're in the balloon, it's a rest time with coffee. If you're on the airplane, you're really thinking about open-ended ideas and networking with people. So we created this experience all around customer requirements, of course, but we created it in a way that the guests watching are getting additional value from what they're seeing, and able to respond through emojis personally on the screen. You could throw up an emoji if you were liking what you were hearing, and in this way, the client got feedback that they wouldn't normally have even real time in a presentation. Of course, there's also programmatic stuff that you can do with this. So for Philip Morris, they have an annual virtual recruitment fair that we turned into an all virtual affair with different rooms, different areas where we actually were able to link up the employees of the building with the candidates coming in, which is quite a unique opportunity for both parties. So that was kind of our year last year as we developed, at least in terms of project work. And through this, we had some moments of success that we'd like to share with you. One was that participation and interaction and co-creation were really the value adds that a client got from this. A lot of cases, I think, when clients go virtual, they think it's just going to the tools of technology that they have, but it's actually still all about the experience. So ways to hit some value adds on top of normal webinars and QAs were things that shined. Multi-sensory and haptic moments, offering, you can maybe see from some of that work, more impactful experiences, things that are going to make deep impressions on guests, and combining things with a tangible memento. So in some cases, even mailing things out to guests after the event. Autonomy and freedom of choice will always be a part of digital. We need to program that so that we're creating almost a festival feeling in some cases, where a guest can go where they want, when they want, and still get the same experience. One thing we found with digital events is that your timing has to be much quicker, timing and pace. We're embracing short attention spans here. We need up-to-date content that's going to catch some eyes, and then we need to make use of that in the time we have. Interspersing events with breaks has also been something that's become kind of a standard in our virtual events. Also, networking and interpersonal dialogue, again, providing extra value for clients and for the attendees of the event to a relevant network. And finally, we've really become more about content creation than we have ever in the past. There are actually ways in which in a virtual world, your content actually looks better and you can do more with it. There's less kind of obstacles that you have than even on a live space. So something you want to take advantage of. All of these are insights that kind of build into us what we are looking at in the future when we move to hybrid events. So we have made an absolute commitment to be a leader in hybrid events, to position our agency to do that. And of course, in the beginning of that, we need to define it. So, what we're thinking of is what comes post COVID-19. There's still a lot of unknowns. We will need to be adaptable to that. But based on our experiences, both in the past and in the past year, and in our skill sets, I think we're in a good position to say that hybrid events will be the convergence of live and digital at an eye, what we call an eye level, kind of making it eye to eye. What this means is, uh, conceptually speaking, someone who's having a virtual experience and someone who's having the same live experience should get the same value out of it. Doesn't mean the same experience, it means the same value. And so where we begin with that is first we'll make the assumption that, let's say we have a 500-person event. Half will be in the future, half will be live, and half will be on a digital platform. So what we need is an open platform that not only converges what's happening live with digital tools, but also being able to use all the digital tools available. So here is our kind of concept on this, where you have in the boxes the live event with the plenary breakouts, one-on-one networking. Of course, that can be streamed out for digital use, but you've also got, on the other hand, the need to provide virtual experiences in a studio, in a virtual conference, and with pre-produced content, and perhaps with even mailings of physical content that you're sending to guests. So combining these two together is the name of the game in virtual events. But as I mentioned, it's also very much about the tools that are available. So we're not in the business of creating net new tools digitally for things that are already out there. What we're doing is combining those tools into our open platform so a given client can use any of the tools that they're used to. And what we've got now is our open platform for hybrid events, in which a client will step into a kind of simple branded portal screen, and behind that will be everything that they need for the event, completely customizable, any number of levels that you want or different kinds of experiences. This, in our view, is the future of virtual. So, and it's not only virtual, you're creating an experience that is digitally able to pull in the live experience that you have, but also providing all of these different types of experiences for the guests in a one-stop shop in an easy way. It could be guided, or it could, again, be their freedom of choice. But imagine the power of that once we get that going. But that's not to say that live's not going to come back. Naturally, we have spent decades of our time, as have you, producing live events. So it's important that we start taking steps forward into that. For us, we are very much an expert on guest management. We are now considering that to be guest and crew management, because each event that we do, certainly in the near term, is going to have a process that takes into consideration the health care of the guests. So it's going to start well before the event. We'll be building things through software, not just for invitations anymore, for guest management or communications, but also for risk assessments as we move forward towards the event. Again, being responsive to where we are at that point in time. Ensuring that all standards are met along the way. GDPR in Europe is huge to protect privacy of people. So that's taken in consideration. But then moving through our flow with this kind of extra layer that gives us COVID compliance, so that when we're registering guests on site, we're relatively certain we're fully safe, and then we can take the safeguards we need on site to get to 100%. That naturally will include testing. So we're working on things that allow a temperature check on site, rapid testing, vaccine and contact tracing through apps. This, of course, once you're on site, is a kind of follow-up test. There'll be things done in advance. But once we're on site, we're also going to be able to do that. We've contracted in Germany with a company that is providing mobile testing centers. So this is run out of something like a van that is branded for us or for the event, and is fully equipped to do testing for hundreds of guests on site in a rapid way. So that's where we're headed with this. We've got it in place already. This is kind of loosening up a bit the kind of governmental role in Germany or the corporate role where they need to be safe. We're doing everything we can to ensure that an event's going to go off without a hitch in a live and virtual setting. So creating different areas for meeting registration, you got to consider that people are going to have to wait a little bit, and then an entrance and exit situation that makes this COVID compliant and creates a feeling of safety. And even once you're into the event space, creating pathways where people are able to ensure that they're socially distant. And we're able to ensure it through metrics. That's really one of the main convincing parts of moving our industry forward. Moving to more towards the virtual sense or to another topic, lots of things we did last year kind of rolled into more strategic approaches. For example, a virtual first conference center. We have clients who also have offices all around the world. We found some of the events we were doing were linking together different areas where in past times, perhaps everybody would be traveling to one location. Now we're able to keep them essentially in their home locations in most cases, and they can hit one of our virtual conference centers worldwide. These are setups that are tuned towards virtual events that are COVID compliant, that have everything we would need to create a fully scalable live event. So we've got stage and screen, also with digital layouts. We've got everybody we need there, techs, ways to set up people in kind of a VIP setting, a moderator who can take people through the program, and again, setting it up so we can do this globally for clients who are going to do larger than webinar, larger than weekly meeting events, but can't travel to do that in a live sense. So we've got the capability to put 8 speakers on stage at once, 100 VIPs in studio in a virtual way, or 50 guests socially distanced and seating. So there can be some live component to this. And naturally, you've got all the things that we have these days with, for us, it's up to 1,000 participants in an interactive way, and then the rest streamed to a general audience. One of the nice things about this is there's some design component to it. You've got different studios in different places that can have different looks or can be similar. But you can do things like take a speaker who is virtual into different environments, all in real time, in very creative ways. It comes out great when you're streaming it. You also use tools then to be able to stream and flip screens into digital when you need to. And you can imagine like the end game of this might be that a client can book a 1 or 2 hour fully capable event just a week in advance or whatever it is, and we can do it all around the world. I mentioned eye-to-eye interaction. One of the keys of creating this hybrid environment is going to be upping the game on the virtual side. So when we think about how to combine an experience with live guests or how to create value for virtual guests, we've got some hacks here. So for one example is a chat roulette. A very cool thing. Imagine being in an event. You're given a link or there's an area you can go to for networking. You jump into a room. It's your picture on the screen. You have kind of a 2-box with another person who randomly comes up, or the system can be programmed to choose certain people to come up and for you to have a 5-minute conversation too. It's not like speed dating or something like that. It's more really friendly, getting to know people who you probably wouldn't have talked to even in a live case, and creating kind of an extra value on the virtual event. But you can build this into the live event as well. Imagine having screens in a networking area where people sit down and are also meeting, even if you're sitting a few feet away from each other, meeting virtually, or meeting people who weren't able to attend. A very powerful tool that creates kind of a new outlook on virtual events. Another thing we've done quite a bit is work on second screens. So when you're in a virtual world, you want to be able to concentrate on the person that you're talking to. You want your guests to still see you on screen. You take them out to a second device for polling or gamification or even surveys, things like this. And it creates more value for both guests who are virtual and live. Collaboration tools is something we're taking from the virtual world and moving it into live. So there's plenty of co-creation tools out there now that can be used for breakouts, that we can create just one environment out of this 500-person group, split them up into breakouts and have them working together, whether they're live or virtual. And finally, for product-specific stuff, maybe even more towards trade shows, having that face-to-face interaction, even with the virtual guests, where you're able to explain certain product features, is also a key element. Now, through all this, we don't want to lose our core. So part of hybrid events will still be, and even more so, creating ROI for a client. For us, we had already put into place something we call Live Plus Marketing Automation, which uses the data that we were getting from live events and uploads it into a marketing cloud for clients. These event analytics, once they're in the cloud, will create an incredibly powerful tool. We get that actually easier from a virtual world than we do in live. So this is something that will remain for us. Agile event management is something our agency is known for and has kind of pioneered. But creating that kind of lean, open-ended look where we're working with the client eye to eye. And this is more about mindset of the agency. So things like a collective ownership and a positive attitude, failure acceptance, continuous learning, empowering the teams, all of these things in a virtual first environment are critical. And we think moving forward into hybrid, this will be a key part of your agency or your own approach. And the nice thing about this is it's set up, from the IT world, but you have a Scrum team that can have expertise from any number of events related industries or outside industries. So you're able to kind of plug and play with people for each project. And the client is always involved on an interim basis. So you're not waiting until the end. With virtual, we've got all these things that hit us much earlier than they do with live events. Agile is a great way to handle that. Wanted to kind of move here towards a shout out towards live marketing, because this presentation, and when people think about hybrid, we're still kind of firmly entrenched with this. We've got to go to virtual. But it's interesting for us that a lot of the work we've done and the key learnings we've gotten back have really been about how live will be back and how we'll do it. So one thing we noticed early on is really, if you're a client, you've got to realize support is needed. And that is not talking just about tools and tech. It's actually even more important when you're speaking of goals, strategies, concepts for events, and content. All these things have to come first in order for the event to be successful. And that is same as it ever was for us. We're well positioned to deliver on these kind of content parts. Social distancing drives live. This is a double meaning. Naturally, I think we're going to be living with social distancing and masks for the foreseeable future. But on the other hand, being socially distanced, being remote, sheltering in place, the longer we have this, and we all know it, the higher the desire to be social. And that leads us right back into live events. Digital is decimating live, but only in some formats. There's things that will always be better in a live sense. What we're seeing with our clients is their tendency so far is to look at doing less events, but doing them bigger and with higher budgets. And part of that budget is going to be a plan B. So crisis management is now become a must-have for us. A lot of these things with how the world is today, they're pushing us forward on trends that we've seen over a number of years. This is one of them. I think all future concepts are going to have a plan B. And we're well tuned now to deliver that for clients. Social interaction will be revalued and reappreciated. I think a lot of brands have learned the limits of digital. It's great to go from whatever, 100 people to 1,000 people in reach. But it still comes down to what you're telling them and how you're saying it. It comes down to the content. But then also, you can't replace being face to face with somebody and having that emotion that we all get from live events. And that makes live events become more valuable. After these long periods, we feel like live gatherings are going to be getting fully embraced. This is just to kind of end on a positive note. Earlier on, I mentioned we're in an era of a structural change to our industry. I think we've got to face that head on. However, we as an agency do believe that live is going to come back with a vengeance. So we got to hang in there, not lose our skill sets or our confidence, and move things forward just step by step. Because in the end, we all have the campfire gene. And so storytelling will always be the thing, the thing that gets us up in the morning, the things that make our heartbeat faster, and the things that make live events such a great part of the whole marketing world. So we look forward to getting back to that. In the meantime, we'll be building our virtual tools. We hope that you today found some insights from this, from things that you've done up till now, whether it's the same or different. Hopefully, it takes some insights and it's able to move you forward. I will always be available to you when needed. And now I'd like to turn it back over to Donna. And thank you very much for today. Appreciate it.
Wow, that was a lot of information. We have so many questions for you, so I'm gonna try and get to as many as I can. So what platform, if any, do you use for the virtual roundtable?
Yeah, that was one specific project. Our open platform is really set up to use anything, and we've had clients literally use anything. In that case, they left it up to us, and we used the platform WorksUp for digital. In the background, all the speaker connections were in our what we normally use for the technical part. So it was on WorksUp. It was streamed through YouTube as well.
Okay. They also wanted to know if you could share that flow chart that you would, the diagram that you had done that shows the show of the show flow of the hybrid event. Is there a way for you to share that?
That is a probably. I'll have to speak with our agency on that. I think it's going to be fine, but we'll do that through ILEA. So no problem.
Okay. Can your company provide animated backgrounds for virtual success and then place on a website?
Yeah, absolutely. It's another thing about going virtual is that we recognize that the value of that is in some cases pre-produced content, but also post, being able to go out and see everything you've got. So we definitely do that. We've done a number of events with green screens or otherwise where we've got animated content behind, under, surrounding speakers. Yeah, all of that is in play for the platform.
Perfect. So we do have a couple people who've voiced that, they don't necessarily have the budget to partner with a company to implement hybrid events for every event that they produce, and they want to know what tips you have for producing hybrid events on a tight budget.
Yeah. Um, it's funny, if you're talking about just virtual, you can get in a pretty low and reasonable range of things if you're willing to kind of put up with some glitches. Honestly, um, my first piece of advice is don't lose the team behind what you're doing. If you can get a technical expert, a content expert, people who are going to help you produce the event, people who know event management and project management, that's going to take care of a lot of your problems, because there's a lot of tools out there that actually don't have large fees, or perhaps in some cases are even free, but you need to have people who have the knowledge to get that. So don't lose that. Even if you have a small budget, get these people who are really experts in their fields, and they're easy enough to find, flexible enough, and really want to make it happen for you. Tools wise, I like to think of it like, if you have a smaller budget, you're probably going to go with a virtual only event. If you have a virtual only event, think about what it's going to look like on the screen rather than the fancy stuff that you're doing on the background. And in my case here, if this is coming up right, it's pretty simple to put this together, but I have a full screen presentation behind. That's what I want you to know. So
Well, there was a lot
identify
of
the keys.
people who were very, very intrigued by that and wanted to know how we were putting those graphics onto the screen background behind you on a
Yeah,
Zoom.
that's all ILEA. They're slick, man. They know what they're doing. It's a new year, so they're bringing up. They're raising their game.
Okay.
Hit us up after the event. We'll let you know.
Perfect. People are interested in what your experience has been with the demand for gifts or welcome kits during the digital events, and was it more or less based, or is it more or less based on live events for the welcome?
Yeah, that's been a little bit of a journey. Obviously, in most of our markets, live people on site hasn't been possible, but over time, mail has become more possible and accepted. So in the beginning, it was clients were kind of worried about doing that. Later on, for example, we did not a virtual event, but a mailing for a company called Aperol that does alcoholic cocktails, making a nice little box. Yeah, you've got the ice mixer, and you've got the alcohol content, you've got the cocktail mixer. So it was great. You brand it, and people think about everybody being at home right now. I love to receive something at home that's real and touchable. So yeah, that I think this year will be a big thing for most of the events we do. Last year it was a little more of a challenge to convince clients on that.
Yeah. So if you have any more of those Aperol ones, you can definitely send them my way.
You got it.
There was a question on how do you ensure the network stability with streaming and streamed events?
Yeah. Surprisingly, we've had, and this is a little bit knock on wood, we've had relatively few problems with that. You have to realize, again, if you've got the production team behind you that's got the expertise, they're used to this. I mean, when we do live events, there's issues that can happen. Of course, now you've got some broadband connectivity, things like that. We've done some things, probably the furthest on we've gone is we've done some things for the UN, where you're talking about people who are really in areas where they don't have internet access. And in that case, you're using the phone, but you can still plug it in as long as you've given yourself time to kind of work it out, just like a normal event. You can really make a lot of fail safes behind what you do to make that. And that being said, when technical glitches happen, I think we're more understanding these days in the virtual world that there might be a hiccup. There's got to be a kind of expectation that things might go a little bit haywire, and that's actually an opportunity to make something out of the experience, to keep it real, if you will.
We're all trying to get through it, right?
Yeah.
Have you come across any events that weren't able to be done virtually?
Yes, actually. If we're talking about, we do a lot of auto work, and there is a certain amount of, if you're talking about a sales event or a new product, like maybe a media launch, they really need to be with the car. The guests need to be with the car, the look and feel of it. So in that case, it's not that we didn't do the events, but we pivoted to a bit more of things about what content that they would find interesting, but also keeping them on the line for something to be done live in a later case. Sometimes you can reduce the scope of your live event and still get significant value with people coming on site and live. But certainly, yeah, for products that you need to see and touch, it's a little bit tough. For things that are yeah, lots of our large conferences and things, you know how it goes. There's lots of great interaction that happens if it's a party and if it's a networking arrangement. Those are still kind of in progress, and there's some things I think would never really match what we do in live.
Can you address accommodations and accessibility for people with hearing comprehension and sight needs?
Yeah, absolutely. We've done that. You've got the ability in a virtual event to kind of do splits on the screen. So you've got areas where you can use for this. We've also got tools that we can use in the kind of back office or production office part that make it accessible to anybody who needs to be part of the event.
Okay. Let's see. And lastly, we have time for one more. Can you speak to the increased cost of hybrid events?
Yeah, I think that's a little bit of a question mark, isn't it? We have a situation now where, on the one hand, we've been all affected by this greatly, and when it comes back, we don't know what the cost situation is going to be. It could theoretically be a lot higher than what we had previously, not to mention the plan B. On the other hand, you've got clients who are in an economic situation where there's a lot of unknowns. You don't know if budgets will be, and their planning will be increasing or decreasing. So there's going to be a lot of, I think, pressure from both upward and downward pressure that we'll have to deal with. In the end, again, our outlook is, it seems that clients will do less events, but with larger budgets, and part of that budget being set aside for things that are simply on top of standard productions. So that's where the market seems to be heading. We really, how are we going to know for the next few months, right? It's going to be
You did allude to the
interesting to
fact
see how that, just be ready to adapt would be my
you did allude to the fact that you really doesn't seem to be an end, in sight for this. So
yeah.
Well, more.
No, maybe not to the overall issue, but we can still move forward. Just find your core competencies, retool if you need to. Just get yourself moving forward, whether you're a company or a person, and yeah, it's gonna come back.
Yeah, for sure.
That was
Okay. I think that kind of wraps us up for
that's
today.
a positive note to end, I think.
Yeah. Thank you, Richard Stewart, for being our guest today and also for your fantastic presentation. Thank you to Giants Enterprises for your continued partnership and support of our educational series. And thank you to all of you who joined us today. Please mark your calendars for our next educational presentation. It's on Wednesday, January 27th, which is 2 weeks from today at this same time. The topic is catering lessons learned in the wake of COVID-19. This is a panel event featuring ILEA catering and event professionals. Thank you again for joining us today, and see you in a couple of weeks.